This guide is for people who are new to or who are struggling to play DPS. If you are somewhere under Diamond SR, then there is likely something for you to learn here. Today, I'm going to show you the attributes of playing DPS effectively that I've learned through studying pro players in the Overwatch League, watching pro streamers, and practicing different strategies myself. Specifically, I'll show you what those attributes are, why they are important, and how I practiced to get good at them, so that hopefully you'll come away with some strategies you can try in your own game. First, the disclaimer. This video contains my opinions from hundreds of hours of practice. This video will not magically make you better at DPS, but it will certainly give you the tools you need to step up your own game. Not all of these tips apply to all DPS evenly, so use your brain and you'll figure out how to apply them to the DPS you want to play. I will also add that many of these tips will up your game on all roles, but I am focusing on DPS in this video. So here's the full list of tips we'll be going through today. We're going to go through your hardware, we're going to go through your mouse sensitivity, we're going to go what skill sets you should focus on first, we're going to go through how to practice but being smart about it, and we're going to go through watching pros and other online guides. Hardware and Battlestation setup. So this is actually way more important than you might think. Consider that your hardware, specifically your mouse and keyboard, are the only devices telling Overwatch what you need it to do, and your monitor and headphones are Overwatch's only devices telling you what's happening. So how these pieces interact is actually super important. So here's the basics. You'll want at least a 20+ inch 1080p monitor positioned so that your face is roughly at the center of the monitor, no more than 12 to 18 inches from your face. I use the tip of my nose as a guide, but in general, try to get your monitor at eye level so that your central and peripheral vision are in play. Number 2, get a bigger mouse pad. Personally, I use a Magic Playmat as my mouse pad, as they're not only cheap, but the perfect material and size for a mouse pad. It's worth noting that not all pro DPS players use a mouse pad of this size, but most do, and it will become apparent why that is when we're going over mouse sensitivity later. Number 3, get a better mouse. The mouse you use should have configurable DPI settings so that you know exactly what DPI your mouse is running. This will be important shortly when you're setting up your in-game sensitivity. Number 4, get good headphones, and no, I don't mean earpods. Sound is often an overlooked element of competitive gaming, but a huge percentage of your plays should come from adaptation through sound cues like footsteps and bullet sounds and voice lines. Having proper headphones will allow you to do this more effectively, and for God's sakes, turn off your music. I can't tell you how many DPS players I know who listen to music when they play. Turn it off. Number 5, finally, sit up straight and get your elbow off the table. Getting good, especially at DPS, is building muscle memory, and you're not going to do that with your wrist. You need to do that with your pecs, your shoulder muscles, and basically your whole arm in general. This is going to be uncomfortable at first, but I promise you it's incredibly important to building the muscle memory you need to hit your shots effectively. Mouse sensitivity setup. So now that your Battlestation is up to snuff, we need to make sure that your mouse input is set up to give you the best chance of success. There is a ton of debate around the topic of mouse sensitivity, so when I was figuring out what I should use, I looked up what the pros use in the Overwatch League. What I found is that 1, they use a much lower sensitivity than I did. 2, there's a wide range of sensitivities used, and 3, there's actually something called your effective DPI, which is your true mouse sensitivity. Let's start with that. Your effective DPI equals your mouse DPI multiplied by your in-game sensitivity. Remember that calculation. So if your mouse DPI is set to 800 and your in-game sensitivity is set to 4.5, then your effective DPI, again, which is your true mouse sensitivity, is 3600. This is actually what I personally use on all heroes in-game, but let's take a look at what the pros use so that you can get an idea of a starting point that will work for you. I pulled together a short list of some Overwatch League DPS so that you can get an idea of what players are effective with. What you will notice is that they are mostly in the 3,000 to 5,000 range. 3,600 and 4,800 will be 2 very good effective DPI for you to start with, but play around with this in the practice range to get a feel for what works for you. Also, remember that calculation that I mentioned earlier as well, as you'll likely be jumping between different effective DPIs before you find one that works for you. Also, remember that you don't need to use the same sensitivity for all heroes. I use one for all heroes, but that's just what works for me. Test different DPI settings for different heroes, find what works for you. So what skill sets should you focus on first? There are actually many different types of skills, quote unquote, that go into the equation of being good at Overwatch or anything in general. But in order to become a better player, you need to focus on them in small chunks or even one at a time. The way I break this down is into two overarching groups. First, you have your mechanical skill, and then after that, you have your game sense. There are other skill sets, but these are the two major ones, and will give you a good starting point. Both of these skill sets can be worked on independently, but they are both fairly, or even completely, different from hero to hero. For instance, the mechanical skill and game sense for a hero like Winston is very different than a hero like Widowmaker. There is some overlap, but being a good Winston player is not going to make you a good Widowmaker. With that being said, playing a lot of Widowmaker can increase your game sense on Winston to know how to counter her effectively, and vice versa. Playing a lot of Winston will teach you how to not be countered by him as Widowmaker. So there's a lot of nuance in how to practice all of the skill sets needed to be good at your hero. But that brings me to my next point, practice. So how do you effectively practice mechanical skill and game sense? Let's tackle them one at a time using McCree as an example hero. McCree, in my opinion, is a fairly one-dimensional hero. You're either hitting your shots and you're getting great value, or you're not hitting your shots and being completely useless. He's fairly slow, so he can't flank or get out of tight situations very well, and if he misses his flashbang on a flanker, he can be mostly useless. Unless, of course, you're hitting your shots. So since the vast majority of McCree's toolkit is centered around hitting his main fire's shots, practicing his mechanical skill actually becomes fairly straightforward. You need to practice hitting your shots. Here's how I personally did this with McCree. I went to the practice range and just focused on hitting headshots on moving practice spots. After about an hour, I had memorized their patterns and was hitting damn near every shot as a headshot. About 15 to 20 minutes of this is a great warm-up session on a hit scan hero like McCree as well, so I highly recommend making use of the training area. I then played about 40 free-for-all matches. This is really where you'll hone your mechanical skill, as well as your game sense around those 1v1 battles. For instance, you will learn very fast, if you're playing McCree, that Genji is actually a fairly good counter to McCree, because he will always bait your flashbang directly into his reflect and then wreck you with it. But practicing against enough good Genjis will teach you that you can toss that flashbang right above his head and get the flash off. On McCree, your ability to win in free-for-all is directly tied to hitting your shots, so take the opportunity to practice hitting every shot you can. After about 20 to 40 matches, you'll start to feel your mechanical skill on a hero like McCree or any other one that you're practicing on become very tight. This is when you know it's time to move on to practicing your game sense. While explaining and understanding mechanical skill is a little bit more straightforward, game sense is a little bit harder to grasp. It's your ability to win engagements. It's knowing what you need to do, where you need to be positioned, what you should be focus firing. There are so many variables that go into game sense, and really you have to just play to start to grasp them. Now, these can be fairly difficult to practice, as there is no competitive practice mode in the game yet, and I don't really recommend just jumping into comp. You're just going to tilt yourself and a bunch of your team, and you're not actually going to learn much in that state. You might even get reported for not playing as a team because, like, you're practicing a hero, so just avoid comp until you really feel good on a hero. Instead, jump into quick play and try your best to play as a team and play your role to its strengths. Like, if you're playing Genji or Tracer, then practice your flanking routes, practice one clipping, practice getting out when you need to. If you're playing McCree and Soldier, then practice positioning with your backline and protecting them and hitting the shots that you need to. At this point, you've done a ton of mechanical practice, so when playing an actual game, you'll start to see patterns emerge in your gameplay. Those patterns are what you need to remember, as those are the game sense that you're looking to acquire and your keys to success. Just as an example, when I was practicing McCree, I started to notice great success in winning matches when I did what I could only describe as micro flanks in team fights. For instance, on defense in Watchpoint Gibraltar, First Point, there are actually 2 micro flank routes that McCree can take to get a quick kill on a squishy if their attention is occupied. I've won so many games just by knowing what the enemy will be focused on at any given moment and then taking the opportunity to lunge. Every hero will have opportunities like this, patterns like this that you'll see, and those are the opportunities that you just need to pay attention to what your hero's strengths are and take advantage of them. That will increase your game sense. You'll find those patterns and you'll increase your skill on that hero and as a DPS. So my final point in this guide actually goes beyond playing the game and practicing and goes into watching people play that are better than you, as well as finding more nuanced tips for specific heroes and other online guides. I can't stress enough that if you're trying to get better at the game, you should be watching the Overwatch League. The Overwatch League is the pinnacle of competitive play in this game, and watching at least a few matches every single week will up your game sense by a ton, just by watching them play. You'll start to learn what to expect, what a team fight is, what comps work well against other comps, where certain heroes should be positioned, and countless other fantastic lessons that you can learn just by watching the pros play. Again, you should also make use of more specific guides on YouTube. The guide you're watching right now is more of a general guide to get you started in playing the DPS as a role, but there are countless guides online made specifically for the hero that you want to play. I highly recommend making use of those, and if anyone likes my presentation style and wants to see me make more specific guides, then leave a comment below and I'll see what I can do. Beyond all of that, once you have the basics down that I've outlined in this video, it's just going to take time playing the game. There's no magic pill to getting good at something, but I certainly hope I've laid out a bunch of tools which will help you get started. These strategies certainly upped my own game by quite a bit, and I'm sure they will work for you too. Anyway, that's going to do it for me today. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, as it really helps us out and lets us know that you like the content that we're producing. Also, let me know in the comments below if this guide was helpful to you, and if there are any other tips you think I missed, I'll certainly add those to the description of this video so that people watching can have the benefit of them. Thanks for watching, everyone, and this is Radical Edward signing out.